Metal Gear.
In this world of robotronics and AI and automation, there is mecha units, big giant robots that we all know and love in the world of video games, movies and anime. A few come to mind like Gundam, Transformers and especially Metal Gear Solid. Big giant mechanical metal robots in all shapes and sizes with cool fighting capabilities with the amazing epic Japanese culture that has inspired several nations across the world to make robotronics. And of course the great director Hideo Kojima implementing all such things with human-controlled mecha and AI alike in the franchise we all know and love.
Ah, that's just great. More Metal Gears.
This is one for the history books. The world's first Halo jump. Spread your wings and fly. God be with you.
Oh, damn it. My Lunchables are in there.
So chronologically speaking in the story of Metal Gear Solid, MGS3 is where the first Metal Gear makes its true appearance, known as the Shagohod. The developer behind such project is Sokolov, and just like most Metal Gears with its nuclear launching capabilities, only it lacks being bipedal, unlike the other Metal Gears we've seen. It's definitely not the strongest and best in design, but it's a starting point for Metal Gears as a whole. Sokolov specialises in rocket engineering technology. He is overseeing the project of making the Shagohod possible due to forced research amongst many scientists. That's if he's not looking at dirty magazines in his spare time.
No longer will I masturbate my penis. I've got rockets to build. Oh, but this is my favorite. Hentai. Oh.
You must be Sokolov.
You won't take my collection? It's mine. Go poke your cock somewhere else. This is my room, my collection, and if I don't get you...
Nap time, Sokolov. Time for me to have a look at this wonderful collection. Eva, time to fucking step on it.
Unlike Metal Gear, the Shagohod was not a bipedal tank. While it could walk in a limited fashion on the tips of the runners carrying the two augers, it mainly drove with them flat. The complete Shagohod prototype was articulated, consisting of a front module with the engine, drive systems, driver's cabs as well as most of the armament, and a rear module which formed the bulk of the vehicle, carrying not only ballistic missile, but also rocket engines. The rear module was an air cushion vehicle, towed by the front section and could be jettisoned from the front module if required. The rear module carried the missile launch tube on its right upper surface, with the large fire control radar on the left and the rocket booster units mounted on the sides. The rear slope surface consisted mostly of large grill, probably the air inlets, for the engines and air cushion. In speculation, much of the internal space was taken up by fuel for the boosters, and whatever systems were used to produce the air cushion. Of course, within speculation, much of the internal space was taken up by the fuel for the boosters and whatever systems were used to produce the air cushion the rear body runs on. However, it is unknown if they provided any additional support to the front module in terms of the fuel or power generation. Despite this, the augers were notably more susceptible to damage when the front module was jettisoned from the rear than in any other situation, being immobilized rather than slowed, suggesting the rear module was indeed linked to the forward module's drive systems. The rear module did not appear autonomous. It lacked any visible control station or method of steering. The vehicle weaponry included 12x7mm heavy machine guns, 300 rounds, and one additional turret mount for an anti-aircraft work with 360 rounds. In addition, it mounted 6 NK-112 Cobra surface-to-air guided missiles, a 100-barrel volley gun, and a single SS-20 Sabre IBM inter-range ballistic missile. When complete, the Shagohod weighed 152 tons and was 75 feet long by 27 feet high, by 21 feet wide, and a maximum road speed without the rocket engines being activated of 50 miles per hour. The only way a nuclear missile could be launched by the Shagohod if the rocket boosters would be activated, giving it the thrust it needs to fire such weapon. The amount of damage the Shagohod seems like it could take made it look like it was invincible, because when Snake tried to blow up the Grousey Grab facility, the Shagohod survived the blast.
Babes, what the fuck?
Using this booster, the Shagohod can achieve a land speed of over 300 miles per hour.
That monster can go more than 300 miles per hour?
Yes.
In the early 1960s, this was a step forward in innovation in technology that would keep other nations across the world within check. as for once of all, instead of using a silo to launch these nuclear weapons, we now had a metal gear that was capable, as long as it had enough of a runway, to launch them anywhere it needed at any time. Story is quite tragic in itself, because Sokolov didn't really want to build the Metal Gear. He wanted to build something else, in fact, before his tragic demise.
All I wanted to do was build big giant dildos.
Ah, I see. Big enough for Volgin?
Yes. Snake, you must take me to America. I heard the bitches over there are thick. Come on, Volgin. My balls clap harder than that when they're hitting your mother's face. Ooh, Daddy, hurt me more. That's it, Daddy. Did someone forget to recharge their batteries?
Sadly, Sokolov would get beat to death, but there was another scientist, and his name is Granin, and in truth be told, he designs Metal Gears way better.
What the fuck?
So Alexander Lovanovich Granin is the reason behind the concept of these Metal Gears. Granin liked to get hella faded in his spare time, because he felt depressed that his research wasn't being put to work and Sokolov was getting the attention.
Get that trash out of my face. You'll spoil my drink.
Within this cutscene in Metal Gear Solid 3, you can actually see all the Metal Gears that would later be developed down the timeline, such as Metal Gear Rex.
For you see, I'm going to send these documents to my friend in the United States.
It's Huey, I'm Red.
What?
Fuck off!
These bastards will live to regret this. And when they themselves become the targets of my creation, they will know my true greatness.
And somewhere in Granin's room is also the Metal Gear Ray from MGS2.
Well, this technology will be the missing link between infantry and artillery. A kind of Metal Gear, if you will.
So Granin's definitely the OG of designing Metal Gears, and you can see the Zone of the Enders behind him as well, which is a completely separate franchise, but you get the point. Although Granin's time was short-lived, he did help Snakey Boy, and we cannot forget some of the most memorable drunken moments from Granin, which had us amused. And for a guy who hates capitalism, he soon changes his mind considering he's a Soviet patriot through and through.
Typical capitalist dog. No manners. To capitalism!
But sadly, like Sokolov, he'd surely meet his demise.
Nice shot!
Wait, this is so much fun.
You earned a platinum medal!
Although the Shagohod was defeated by Snake, it wasn't easily taken out. I mean, this thing had tons of armour on it, and it just kept coming back for more. Even once they blew the bridge down, this thing just flew out of nowhere, with Volgin obviously controlling it, still at the time, in the cockpit.
Did we beat him?
No.
Get off!
What?
I'm gonna lure it back here.
One cannot write the Shagohod off as being the worst Metal Gear. That thing takes a load of damage, and even after they actually disabled it, Volgin was still able to control it through his electronics. So that was one Metal Gear down amongst many, and there was many more to come.
Let's go back to my place, Eva, and fuck.
So as we move towards the events of Peace Walker, AI and technology in itself has now become way more advanced, and that's including Metal Gears, as Huey Emmerich and Dr. Strangelove have developed new Metal Gears that don't no longer need a pilot and actually can be controlled by itself. This time in Metal Gear Peace Walker, you fight a variety of Metal Gears instead of just one, with the first Metal Gear being the Pupa.
Look out! It's one of the unmanned! Heads up!
The Pupa was developed by Huey Emmerich as one of the three prototype AI weapons for Peace Walker. Its basic design resembled that of a Shagohod, in which Huey Emmerich took most of the ideas from Granin. Pretty much any Metal Gear design you can think of is based on Granin's work, but you could just say that Huey put his own spin on it by making this Shagohod Pupa a little different.
Those papers the CIA gave you, was there any data on the Shagohod in there?
Shagohod?
A nuclear tank that launches IRBMs. It competed against Granin's system for approval.
Oh, the thing with the rocket. Designed by a guy named Sokolov, right?
What's so funny?
No, I was just remembering some of the commentary Gronin added to the Shagohod papers. You should have seen the way he badmouthed it. I actually took a cue from the Shagohod when I developed the Pupa.
So when we look at the Pupa's weapon, it's mounted with 6 machine gun turrets, 4 on the back and 2 on the head. It was also armed with an electricity generator from generating electrical shock attacks located below the head section, along with 7 launchers on each side of its posterior section that deploy electrical shock units, which resemble the circular lightning rods. The rods could be deployed across a large area after the Pupa would fire its shock attack in the atmosphere. The discharged electricity would then be drawn down the scattered units, injuring any nearby enemy personnel. The Pupa could also use its freely moving front treads as arms for close range attacks. Whilst the AI itself is smart in operating the function of the vehicle, it does give itself away quite easily as it tells you which kind of attacks it's going to be deploying, giving you the heads up. The biggest setback with Peace Walker's Metal Gears is the AI pod, which is quite easy to destroy and is just literally an open target waiting for you to shoot. The Chrysalis is the first airborne Metal Gear in the franchise. It was divided into 2 units, a freely moving front unit and a rear section. Connected by a bar, 3 propeller units gave it great aerial manoeuvrability. Due in its part to its unmanned status, Chrysalis could utilise extreme G-force manoeuvres that most aircraft at the time were incapable of, allowing it to quickly evade missile attacks. If significantly damaged, the Chrysalis will end up landing temporarily while the AI fixes it, with the AI also doing repairs while it is still in the air. It was also capable of airlifting objects that were at least as heavy as 500 tons. This is especially evident with its airlifting Peace Walker from the crater base. This son of a bitch was armed with 4 missile launchers holding a capacity of 2 missiles in each. Along with chain guns, it also carried a railgun on the left side of the rear unit, and utilised unmanned kidnapper drones, each possessing a grappling line and machine gun. The AI would often foreshadow its attacks by a burst of song from its speech synthesis system. Anybody looking at this thing would think it came from another planet.
UFOs kidnap people too. You know, alien abductions. You've heard of the Heel abduction, right? That couple back in the 60s? So when I first saw the Colibri, I thought it was a UFO.
The Fulton recovery.
I know those guys are working with the aliens, even if they wouldn't let me see them.
Well, you best hope they don't catch you next time. They might probe the fingers up your ass.
The Cocoon has to be the most armed Metal Gear we've seen out of every one of them in the franchise, containing all kinds of different weapons and guns. I mean, this thing is quite clunky in itself and it is quite useless, but all round this entire Metal Gear, it is armed to the teeth. So let's get technical. The Cocoon was a towering, heavily armoured vehicle with multiple weapons lining its outer frame. The lower section possessed 4 treads to provide movement. The upper section could rotate 360 degrees and featured a protruding head in which a cylindrical AI pod and large caliber cannon were mounted. Due to its large size and heavy armour, the Cocoon's exhaust vents were lightly armoured in order to prevent issues with overheating. These vents were located both on the underside of the Cocoon and on the axis of the Cocoon's upper section near its back, although only the posterior vents were easily accessible. When overheating after sustaining enough damage, the AI's Vocaloid program also sputters whilst the AI weapon itself moves erratically before eventually ramming itself until hitting a solid area, where it will remain stuck, sometimes even causing the ladder in the lower portion of its body to fall due to the shock of the ramming. Along with the heavy main cannon, the Cocoon had the capability to launch missiles and hedgehogs, multiple Spigot anti-submarine mortars modified by Huey for surface use. They take time to fully load, however, and even then the latter weapon system cannot actually be deployed its weapon system until the lamp section activates. It was also armed with 6 multi-barrel machine guns, 2 each on both front and the back end of the lower section, and 2 at the front upper section. Smaller caliber machine guns lined the left and the right sides of the lower section, 5 on each along with 2 on the upper section at the rear and on the large 3-part mechanised arm. The arm could be used to ward off the enemy infantry that may position themselves beneath the vehicle or clamber aboard the outer frame, and was also equipped with a chainsaw-like attachment that would spin around in a sweeping motion. Besides its weaponry, the Cocoon can also utilise its own body as a weapon via vertical movement, effectively acting as a giant hydraulic press. The Cocoon was quite clunky and immobile at times, especially if you were to take the AI pod. The best way to take this thing on would to be just not rightly underneath it, but just close enough where you can hit underneath it without the weapons not having their range to shoot you with.
Time to kill another Metal Gear. Just know if I die, Kaz, I love you, bro. Well, here I go. Looks like the retirement will have to wait.
So as Big Boss chases Peace Walker over a mountain like a boss, shit's definitely got a lot more real, as the AI is a lot more advanced within Peace Walker and it has nuclear launching capabilities. For me, this was definitely one of the most toughest Metal Gear fights you can have. At times it could be highly unpredictable and its barrage of weaponry was insane. Peace Walker utilised stealth from radar and satellite images, which drastically reduced any chance of it being destroyed in a nuclear attack. Its most devastating weapon, however, was a massive hydrogen bomb mounted to the frame that was more powerful than even the Tizar bomb, so that if necessary it could sneak into the enemy territory and self-destruct. It carrying this hydrogen bomb was also one of the primary reasons why bipedalism and quadrupedalism was required for its development, as it couldn't be loaded on missiles nor could it be carried by a strategic bomber due to its immense size. Its overall capabilities relating to nuclear deterrence was referred to and land-based version as the SSBN. Its footprint size alone was large enough to dwarf even an elephant, one of the largest animals currently alive. Peace Walker was controlled by two AIs, the Reptile Pod and the Mammal Pod, which were modelled after the human Cerebrium and the Cebrium, respectively. While the Reptile Pod was mainly responsible for operating the humane frame, the Mammal Pod possessed more advanced decision-making capabilities, giving it the capacity to launch a retaliatory nuclear strike at the most effective target. The Mammal Pod AI's neural process were modelled after the legendary soldier, the Boss. So in a way it's like if the Boss was actually a Metal Gear instead of being a human being, if that makes any sense, which is quite worrying in itself because she's a badass. Peace Walker is one of the definite reasons why we shouldn't have AI controlling such dangerous weapons. This could be one of the most dangerous Metal Gears of all times, because no amount of damage or removing the circuit boards was going to stop the nuclear launch from happening. And then from some miracle reason which saved the day was the boss's persona managed to take the Metal Gear and drown it. It was almost like she were there at spirit. It's a good job the boss's persona was implemented in such weapon, as there wouldn't have been any more later games within the franchise. It'd have ended right there.
She's drowning herself to stop the transmission.
Look!
The boss's innocence has been proven. Do you hear it, Snake? Do you hear the boss's song?
Without a doubt, one of the most emotional and best endings and scenes within Peace Walker. I'd really love to see this game remade into a way we could actually see the cutscenes in a beautiful animation that it deserves.
Kaz, shut that thing down.
I can't! The controls aren't responding!
Then how's it moving?
I made some modifications.
So we can't leave Peace Walker without actually mentioning Metal Gear Solid Zeke, which in itself looks almost like Metal Gear Rex in a way. Metal Gear Zeke was created using parts of salvage from the AI weapons of Peace Walker project, the rocket boosters from Pupa, the radome and railgun from the Chrysalis, the armour from the Cocoon, and the legs from Peace Walker, along with the head parts from all four. This was Big Boss's ultimate Metal Gear at the time, which is ironic considering he destroys them, and now he has one.
Everybody say it with me. Dead ass. Dead ass.
Its AI, unlike Peace Walker, was not a replica of human thought. Consequently, it was unable to make decisions relating to nuclear retaliation. However, it was advanced enough to be capable of highly independent action in combat when given orders from a pilot, including protecting infantry, destroying the enemy, and launching a nuke. Zeke's speech synthesis system allowed it to vocalize preset messages and even songs depending on the situation, although it could not perform original compositions. This is not the strongest Metal Gear by far, and Snake does make pretty much short work with it.
Good riddance, Snake. She was a bitch, and she put me in the friend zone, boss. Let her drown.
This is the real Sahelanthropus! You and your friend will die here! Behold! Today is the day weapons learn to walk upright!
By far the most intimidating Metal Gear out of the entire franchise. With its huge, massive structure that stands so tall, overtowering most people, buildings and towers. While not technically equipped with a nuke as standard like most Metal Gears, Sahelanthropus still had an incredibly destructive nuclear potential in a very different way. Sahelanthropus' armour was composed of depleted uranium, a byproduct of the creation uranium-235, carrying about 23 tons of it on its body. Being a heavy metal, it allowed for greater storage of kinetic energy and fairly potent density, although not quite the best choice for armour in Miller's opinion. Huey claimed that he wanted to reduce the bulk for certain areas on its upright body, not to mention he was unable to source ceramics technology from any manufacturers. So the main reason depleted uranium was used was so that Sahelanthropus would be able to create a nuclear bomb all on its own using the material. By using built-in uranium-enriched archaea, the Metal Gear would have been able to quickly melt parts of its own armour and extract the uranium-235 from its high concentration. The end result being a highly enriched weapons-grade uranium. Sahelanthropus itself would become a walking nuclear bomb. Huey claimed that if it were to self-destruct, the nuclear yield would have been in the region of 15 kilotons, but it was fortunately recovered before it could be finished by Skullface, and its uranium enrichment archaea was never activated. And if we're talking about what the Sahelanthropus was packing, it was packing a capable of deploying metallic archaea grenades disabling most technologies in the area. Small arms and archaea manipulation platforms are left unaffected, but all forms of vehicles, land-based or airborne, are rendered inoperable by the cloud. Archaea blades, which is a pair of flexible nanofiber blades lined with archaea manipulators. These weapons are capable of either directly damaging metals that they come in contact with, or stimulating the metals in the soil to create metallic pylons that effectively function as remote mines. However, it requires that the arms to be in optimal condition for the best use, as otherwise it will take significantly long to charge if damaged. Similar to the Chrysalis's kidnapper drones, the Sahelanthropus had something called the surveillance mines, and they were hunter-killer probes that are capable of searching independently or for a target, relaying the results of a Sahelanthropus. Once a target is identified, these probes function as self-guided anti-tank rockets, and along with that they have guided missile launchers, conventional multi-wavelength guided anti-tank rockets, which Sahelanthropus was capable of launching barrages of up to 6 at a time. Their accuracy was further increased by the Merch's spherical radome, meaning that the radome's destruction reduces the accuracy of the guided missile enough to allow enemy to evade the attacks relatively easily. The Sahelanthropus definitely wasn't the most fearsome Metal Gear, and it wasn't actually controlled by anyone apart from, well, Psycho Mantis, in which he would manipulate the electronics to do as he wished against you in battle. The issue with the Sahelanthropus is the armour isn't exactly as strong as some other Metal Gears, and it tends to be a bit clunky when it walks, not getting up to much speed as it seems to be off balance. It does have a giant railgun, but that takes time to charge. For me, the Sahelanthropus were pretty basic to beat, but you tell me how you guys fared with it. And oh yeah, by the way, trying to get underneath the Sahelanthropus is not as easy as you think it is, as it actually has a flamethrower penis. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just go and boot up Phantom Pain. Whilst the Sahelanthropus is quite challenging, its size does really let it down. Whilst it is intimidating to look at, it's a lot easier to beat than you think it is. It's quite easy to penetrate through the armour. And let's not forget, Huey stole a lot of the ideas from Granin, and if the OG was alive today, this thing probably would have been a lot more mean.
The one and only bro. That's it, boss. You're the best. If I was gay, I'd kiss you.
What are you thinking, Kaz? Really brought it to him, huh? What'd you think? Deserving of an S rank?
For you, boss, and that's Randall the Golden Star. So, tell me, Big Daddy, when are we going on one of those box journeys again, huh?
So in 1995, Outer Heaven forces kidnapped Dr. Madnar, the foremost expert in the field of robotics, to build a new Metal Gear. While Dr. Madnar understood the power and inherent evil of his creation, the kidnapping of his daughter forced him to complete it. The TX-55 Metal Gear was a revolutionary weapon because of its ability to launch a nuclear attack from any stable territory, without the need of a nuclear silo. Unlike its predecessor, Zeke, it possessed 2 nuclear warhead launchers, yet it had a much more compact size. Feared by the Western powers, its mere presence in Outer Heaven made the country virtually untouchable, except by a covert mission. TX-55 was unarmed with 2 15mm machine guns, a laser cannon, and multiple medium-range warheads. However, none of its arsenal was put to use, as the TX-55 was destroyed by Solid Snake before its completion by plastic explosives over its feet where the armor was at its weakest. The TX-55 was later revealed to be a prototype for Metal Gear D, the construction of which was commissioned by Big Boss during the Zanzibar land disturbance. Though its very existence was considered to be a direct threat to Western powers, the main purpose was to act as Outer Heaven's nuclear deterrent. By contrast, Metal Gear Rex, one of the TX-55 successors, was created in 2005 under the false premise of being a theater missile defense system. So the following information is outside of Hideo Kojima's core Metal Gear saga, where the TX-55 Metal Gear was foreseen in Ursula and Elisa in a prophetic vision in 1970.
Everything is clear now. The futures we saw were one and the same. Snake, you will destroy Metal Gear. And you will create a new Metal Gear in its place. Your children, les enfants terribles. Snake, your son will bring the world to ruin. Your son will save the world.
That Metal Gear may be only an incomplete prototype, but dear Ursula more than makes up for its shortcomings.
Whilst Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops is not canon with the story, I think it definitely deserves like it should be. Even though Hideo Kojima really didn't have much to do with this, it still feels like this is something that Hideo Kojima would write himself. Anybody remembering way back in the PlayStation Portable how great this game was? And the story and the soundtrack and everything held up really well. And it wouldn't exactly be a Metal Gear game without a Metal Gear. So Raxa was the first Metal Gear prototype ever built, having been developed by the US government, and was complete by Sokolov based on blueprints created by Granin. You could say the two of them practically made it together, and acted as a test model for the ICBM-MG. Raxa's head bore a strong resemblance to the original design, though it possessed only 4 legs, which was merely to step towards bipedalism. In addition, it utilized a sophisticated rocket propulsion system for hovering above the ground and could make a swift landing, destroying everything in its path. The rocket propulsion system could also allow Raxa to move around in a limited manner if its legs ended up damaged. However, its rocket propulsion system was directly beneath its missile pods, meaning that any damage to the missile pods when open would result in a significant amount of damage to its engines. This is probably one of the weakest Metal Gears so far amongst them all, as it is just really a prototype.
Elisa, I'm sorry.
He beat Metal Gear. Metal Gear, done in by a flesh and blood human being. So that's Big Boss.
So in Zanzibar land, the Metal Gear D was the new standard issue. Metal Gear D's standard arsenal was comprised of a 60mm rotary cannon and a 5.656mm machine gun and a 6-missile pod that could be armed with several different types of warhead. While its main purpose was to serve as a mobile launch platform to short medium-range nuclear warheads, it could also function as a weapon of conventional warfare. It also carried a sensor system that consisted of the main camera, laser sights and an image sensor, and an infrared sensor. One of its flaws was the method of transport, as it weighed over 60 metric tons and its overall size was around 6 meters. Even if it is compacted, it was incapable of being transported by any existing cargo planes such as the C-130's Hercules. Because of its immense size, a new helicopter, the Gigant, was developed to transport Metal Gear D. D would be airlifted to an area 25-30 kilometers from its target's destination and then proceed on its own maximum speed of at least 25 miles per hour. Solid Snake has definitely got a knack for throwing grenades and destroying things. Like if someone said there's a big giant robot outside, how are we going to deal with this? Snake just chucks a load of grenades at it. But once again, Solid Snake would destroy Metal Gear D by throwing grenades at it, rendering Grey Fox pretty much a cripple. At this point in time, Metal Gear technology is definitely not at its peak just yet, as there are still weaknesses to exploit. I mean, for goodness sake, you could take this thing out with grenades, not no heavy equipment.
Do you like my Metal Gear, Snake? I've been polishing it just for you. And of course, Snake, I've been hitting the gym, getting liquid gains from my protein shake.
So in Metal Gear 1 we now have Rex, which is the pinnacle of most Metal Gears. It might perhaps just be the best. There was a lot of works over the years in terms of Metal Gears, and one of them that was finally imagined was Granin's Rex, which the project had mass funding from the US government and military alike. And just like Huey Emmerich in innovation of Metal Gears, Otacon would do just the same, if not better. Rex is operated by a single pilot within a completely self-enclosed cockpit, shut off from the outside environment. The radome on Rex's left arm houses multiple electronic sensors that are connected to a high-tech virtual reality interface with the pilot's seat. Destruction of the radome, however, cuts off the sensory data feed and renders the VR interface inoperative, forcing the pilot to manually operate Rex by operating the cockpit, which also exposed it to enemy fire. This flaw was deliberately engineered by Otacon during development, as he felt it wouldn't truly be complete without a weakness or a character flaw of some sort. Rex differed from earlier Metal Gear models in that its legs were heavily armoured and reinforced, not vulnerable like its predecessors, along with near impenetrable compound armour of which only heat weapons could deal significant damage, so this time, Snake, grenades won't work. Rex also had a pair of 30mm XGU-8R rotary cannons, AGM-114P anti-tank missiles, and a free electron variant of the mobile tactical high-energy laser to protect itself from conventional forces. Its feet also possessed retractable metal stake-like protrusions, which were used to find purchase on difficult terrain and could be employed in stomp attacks on an enemy. The AGM-114P anti-tank missiles launched from both Rex's knees and back were a laser semi-active homing type that didn't use wires. The launchers used a low-powered laser illuminator to bounce a coded laser beam off a target that the laser missile would then home in on. The free electron laser cannon mounted on the Rex's belly was capable of generating almost 100 megawatts of energy, 10 times greater than any other laser at that time. Rex's most fearsome weapon, however, was the magnetic railgun, capable of delivering an untraceable nuclear warhead anywhere in the world without the propellant trail or launch flare that gives away the launch position of a traditional ballistic missile. By perfecting the process of electromagnetic acceleration, the railgun is able to fire a projectile with a muzzle velocity of over 100 kilometers per second. It was apparently originally going to be used as a part of the SDI to shoot down the enemy ICBMs outside the atmosphere, and Otacon stated that when fired outside the atmosphere, Rex's nuclear rounds would have a radius effect of 300 meters. So at this point in the Metal Gear timeline, there isn't a better Metal Gear just like it, and it could potentially be the best Metal Gear of all time. Whilst it does have its weaknesses, if it didn't have the weaknesses that Otacon intended to give it, it may be a whole lot more different than we think, almost making it impossible to beat. Because years of trial and error has led to Rex being at its perfected state. Because even legendary soldier Frank Yeager in his cyborg enhancements wasn't enough to be able to fully immobilize Metal Gear Rex. One thing is clear, even most advanced soldiers could not take down Metal Gear Rex. It's just because Solid Snake is such a different kind of breed of warrior that he'd find a way to immobilize Metal Gear Rex but not fully destroying it as a whole. So, let's take a look at Metal Gear Rex's biggest rival.
That's Metal Gear! It's already active!
And now we have Metal Gear Ray, the amphibious underwater Metal Gear that rivals Metal Gear Rex and is designed to be an anti-Metal Gear because Ray's functions was to eliminate Metal Gear derivatives. Metal Gear Ray was a versatile weapon both on the ground and underwater. Standing over 20 meters tall, the original prototype Ray required a pilot to operate it, after having first undergone VR training. The cockpit controls also acted as a harness of sorts, pressuring the pilot into the seat to avoid being thrown around. The giant wings located on each side of the unit acted as a propulsion device. A tail on the hind end of the unit helped to steer the unit underwater. Ray's initial and most prominent armament was a water cutter housed in the mouth. Although its power far exceeds that of a normal water cutter, powered by a massive pump, water could be sucked into the eternal tank and then expelled as a narrow stream under extremely high pressure. As Ray's primary weapon, its purpose was to sever and slice almost anything that it stood in its way, even dense armour. Other armaments include Gatling gun pods located at the end of each wing, a missile pod located on its back capable of firing homing missiles and cluster bombs, and knee-mounted missile pods for ground defence. Metal Gear Ray's exterior metallic casing and armour is made of ceramic titanium alloy for defence against light to medium projectile assault. Ray had a more organic design than the previous models both in appearance and in its function. Its streamlined shape helped to deflect enemy fire and allowed for greater manoeuvrability both on land and in water. Its interior workings were also somewhat organic as it had artificial fibres that contracted when electricity was applied. Much like the natural muscle instead of typical hydraulics, this pseudo-muscle tissue made is very manoeuvrable. It also had a nervous system-like network of conducted nanotubes which connected the widely dispersed sensor systems and relay commands from the cockpit to various parts of Ray's body, automatically bypassing damaged systems and rerouting to auxiliary systems when needed. Another feature when its blood-like armour repairs nanopaste, which was secreted from valves and coagulates wherever the exterior surface was damaged. Unlike previous Metal Gears, it lacked any nuclear weapons and did not function as a nuclear weapons platform. However, it still counted as a Metal Gear, as while lacking any nuclear armaments of nuclear launch capabilities in itself, it nonetheless was developed specifically to counter various Metal Gear Rex derivatives. Metal Gear Ray was massively produced and there were several of them, manned and unmanned alike. So both Metal Gear Rex and Ray are the pinnacle of Metal Gears, but the question is, which one is the best? To ultimately decide who is the best here, we have to look at both the capabilities of Ray and Rex, and advantages and disadvantages of both Metal Gears, plus not to mention who is in the cockpit of both such weapons. In terms of piloting the Metal Gear, Liquid Ocelot definitely has the upper hand, as through previous titles he has driven many Metal Gears. However, Snake with no experience whatsoever, and usually taking out Metal Gears on foot. The first starting advantages for Metal Gear Rex is that it was developed and engineered by Otacon, who is an engineer and a genius in technologies. Metal Gear Rex's was not mass produced unlike Metal Gear Ray's, and Metal Gear Ray holds up as being just as good as Rex, if not considered better. I mean, the whole purpose of a Metal Gear Ray is actually to destroy Metal Gear Rex's, that's what it's designed for. And let's not forget, Rex's armour was superior to Ray's due to old school compound armour and hydronics opposed to Ray's lighter armour. It was largely intact as Snake shot stingers into the radome and the cockpit. Metal Gear Rex was still largely intact as Otacon could still power the electronics using the Mark II. Ray's primary advantage was the fact that it could be submersible underwater, so it wasn't really as good as Rex in terms of being on land, but it had its agility and speed which matched Rex. But Liquid wasn't counting on Ocelot's Street Fighter program, which Rex's mass allowed it to deliver significantly greater force in melee attacks. As clearly demonstrated in the footage, Metal Gear Rex is very overwhelming for Ray, as it can launch barrages of different weapons that do not take very long to charge. Unlike Metal Gear Ray, where it fires its armament, takes a lot longer to charge. I guess the US Marines did not expect that Metal Gear Rex would actually outdo the likes of Ray. Hence, if they would have simulated the two previously in a form of a combat test, perhaps Ray would have been more up to the challenge to take on Metal Gear Rex. You could say Rex is the ultimate Metal Gear because it contains everything that from the previous Metal Gears that was successful than its predecessors in certain areas that made it more powerful. The only criticism I can give Rex is the fact that the cockpit is an open invitation for attack, whereas Metal Gear Ray's is enclosed and more safer for the pilot. I guess you don't need me to tell you that Rex is obviously the superior Metal Gear. as in the end Metal Gear Rex eventually wins in the canon storyline against Liquid Ocelot.
Snake! Fox.
So then guys, you tell me what you think's the best Metal Gear in the comment section down below, and if there's any that I miss, please do fill the gaps. Well, once again guys, it's been the Voice Box. I've spent quite a bit of time making this video. I'd appreciate if you could please like and subscribe, and thank you for watching.